Kakadosh Boker Tov. We're going to continue with a very interesting halacha in Siman Resh Pe Aleph in Shulchan Aruch. This is talking about when do we come to Shachrit on Shabbat morning. So the Rav David Yosef, he brings down the following. He says it is very appropriate also on Shabbat to pray with the Netz, and even if a person does not have a minyan to pray on Shabbat early in the morning, he should get up and he should learn Torah until the tzibur come and they pray. Some Ashkenazim, they have a minhag to wait a little bit, meaning to pray a little bit later on Shabbat than what they're accustomed to during the weekday. But on the other hand, they're still going to pray before what they would pray on Yom Tov. Nevertheless, even the ones that come and they pray a little bit later, they have to be very, very careful that they're praying in the proper time. And they're not going to pray after the time of Kriyat Shema and Tefillah. Now, what exactly, this sounds like a very interesting halacha. What exactly are we talking about here? That he's saying that the Sfaradim that we're doing, right, the Netz, right, that it's still proper, it's very proper, it's Ra'ui v'nachon. He says here, and all of a sudden, right, he comes and he says the Ashkenazim have a difference. What exactly is going on? So here, the Gemara Masechet Megillah, Kav Gimel Amud Aleph, it says, B'Shabbat memarim lavo u'memarim latzet. What does that mean, memarim lavo u'memarim latzet? Rashi says, memarim lavo, shekvar tiknu hakol me'erev Shabbat, v'yafel maher biyatan likrot shima v'vatikin. He says, on Shabbat, you can't prepare anything. All the food, everything's already prepared. So therefore, marin lavo, you come quickly to the Bet Knesset, because everything's already prepared for you. And therefore, you're going to read Kriyat Shema Kevatikin. Remember, the entire concept of Vatikin was on the Kriyat Shema. And that's why, if you remember, we already mentioned, and Rav David Yosef told it to us Mefurash, that as long as we read the Kriyat Shema before the Vatikin, which is by the Vatikin, so then afterwards, even if the Amidah is going to be 2 minutes afterwards, or 2 minutes after, 2.5 minutes afterwards, it's okay, there's no problem, because that's even according to the majority of the Rishonim. Now he says, what is Marin Latzet? Marin Latzet, he says, Mishum Oneg Shabbat. So therefore you come early on Shabbat, and you leave early on Shabbat. Why? You come early, because there's nothing what to do beforehand. So you come straight away to the Bet Knesset, and you're going to pray. But you're going to leave early because of Oneg Shabbat. You have to come, you have to enjoy the Shabbat. So the same thing. V'chen mevuar be'edim Mesechet Sofrim. Mesechet Sofrim says the same thing. Magdimin lavo lebet Knesset b'Shabbat, kedei likro Kriyat Shema k'vatikin im hanetz hachama. And it's also the Tur. He says b'Shachrit mashkimin lebet Knesset. Also the Rashbats and the Seven Magen Avot, right? Shelo utra shena shel Shachrit v'afilu b'Shabbat. We know that there's a Mishnah in Pirkei Avot that says shena shel Shachrit. Motzin et Adam min. That's one of the 3 things that Motzin et Adam min olam. What is Shena Shel Shachrit? He says that even includes Shabbat. Which means even if on Shabbat I want to come and I want to sleep, and I'm going to say, no, it's Oneg. He says, no, that's still Shena Shel Shachrit. I have to be careful. So you have to wake up early. Fine. And they also learned it again from what we learned in Masechet Megillah. Now it says over here in Tshuvat HaGeonim, when the Torah Gaon was asked about the minhag to be Osek B'Torah and to read Tehillim on Shabbatot Yamin Tovim, right? And then afterwards to pray. And he said, "Kach yiruni min hashamayim sheisrael shemashkiim ba'im b'tei knesiyot b'shabbatot yom tovim lomdim midah yafe en osim v'kach minhag Bavel mitchilat galut harishona." So he says there was a minhag that even if it is that they're not going to come and pray early, but they would come to the Bet Knesset early and they would read for 2 hours beforehand. They would come and they would learn and read Tehillim. And he comes and he says that they actually showed him in hashamayim that this is actually something very beautiful. And that was the minhag of Bavel from the beginning of Galut HaRishonah, which means even if they wouldn't be able to pray beforehand, still they would come and they would learn right beforehand. Why? Shekevan shekalu leBavel v'nimat haTalmud u'bitru hamlamdim mitzad hagalut mikabtzu b'nei Yisrael etzel neviim ba'alei Torah tiknu la'ashkim v'tekes yov lamdim ad shachrit. Right? So he comes and he says, so what happened? They used to come early and they used to learn until shachrit. V'eskimu haminhag David HaMelech she'amar chatzot layla akum lehodot lach al mishpetei tzikecha. So he says that's also from a proof. They bring Raya from David HaMelech. And that's also Rav Natronai Gaon. Okay, so therefore he comes and he says that it's mashma, but they used to learn before Shachrit. However, though the Sefer HaItim brings down in the name of Rabbi Shimon HaNagid, Shayu kovim midrashot l'ribut Torah kama shesh shaot, and they asked from the Reshei Yeshivot to permit to them la'achar Kriyat Shema mizman hanetz hachama because of ribut Torah. So basically they had, and this actually they do in certain parts of the world, they wouldn't be able to learn afterwards. So what they did was that they said, okay, fine, we can't do Netz, because if they do Netz, they'll go right away to work. So what are they going to do? They're first going to learn Torah, and then they'll pray. But they're not praying by the Netz, but at least they're learning Torah beforehand. So he said they went and they permitted it in order that it should be Marbitz Torah. Then afterwards they used to say Shachrit. V'chen kedavot b'sefer haitim, and Tana Develiyahu also on the pasuk le'emut sefer Torah zemipicha, mikan amru le'olam yashkim adam v'yishne b'Shabbat, v'yelech lebet hakneset v'bet hamikdash, yikra b'Torah v'yishem elimim, v'achar kach yelech lebeto v'yochal v'yishteh. Okay, he continues going down, bringing different proofs. Now I'm going to bring the other side of the coin. What is the other side of the coin? We said the minhag of the Ashkenazim was that sometimes they'll come even a little bit later. So what's the explanation? There's a Mordechai. The Mordechai, Mesechet Shabbat says, in Shabbat noagim sheishanim b'shachrit yoter mibachol. He says, on Shabbat, you get a day off. What's a day off? You're able to sleep a little bit more than what you sleep during the weekday. Why? He says, because Tamid shel Shabbat lo ne'emar baboker. It says, Uvyom HaShabbat, which means, by the Korban Tamid, right, it always says what? What does it say? This is for the Ashkenazim. This is the Mordechai, yeah? No, I'm just making it. No, I don't know. I thought somebody. Okay, yeah. So he says, right? The Mordechai, right? The Mordechai comes and he says something very interesting. Yeah, the Mordechai says that since in every single one of the Korban Tamid, it always says Baboker, right? And all of a sudden by Shabbat, it only says of Yom HaShabbat. So he says Lashon ze mashma yichur. So it's mashma that it's later on, because when we say Baboker, it means Mugdam Baboker. When it doesn't say Baboker, so it's probably later on. So therefore he comes and he says, it's Lashma Lashon Yichur, is brought down in Mesechet Yomah, Lamedad Nudalef. So he says, because of this, Shamar the Ribar Yehuda bi Romi, Mipira V'Hai Gaon. And it's also brought down in the Rabbeinu Shlomo Megamiza, also as well. He says over here that Kadosh Baruch Hu is waiting for Bnei Yisrael on Shabbat, Umutar Lishom b'Shabbat. ואין חובה לקרוא קריאת שמע בעונתה, כל כך כמו בחול, ולמה כי אולי מדכתיב, right, קדוש יושב תהילות ישראל. And it says יושב תהילות ישראל. יושב means that he's waiting. It's המתנה. So okay, there's a whole question here about the Kriyat Shema. And then he continues going. Towards the end, he comes and he says, there's a lot of arichut here. There's like 4 or 5 pages here in the Halacha Brura about this Halacha. And he comes and he says, so it comes out that maybe it's going to be a machloket between whether we have the Masechet Sofrim, the Midrashim, the Gaonim, Rashi, Tur, Rashbat, to do with waking up early. And then you have on the other side, Rav Hai Gaon and others, that at least, okay, they would still wake up early, but they would learn and then they would pray Shachrit. Or then you have the Mordechai, which is going to be that you're going to wake up a little bit later, right? That's what you're going to be doing on Shabbat. And this Mordechai is actually brought down in the Ramah, because it says, right, in the Ramah, this is the Ramah again in Siman Resh Pei Aleph, נוהגים בשבעה מאחרים תול ואול בית הקנה בחול, because תמיד של ימות החול נאמר בבוקר, ואצל שבת נאמר of יום השבת, תמשמע ייחור. So it comes out, the Ramah is actually paskening this Mordechai. Maran did not posek this Mordechai, because he has also the Tur, and the Tur said, right, so this for Sfaradim, that you're supposed to wake up early, right? You're supposed to wake up for the Netz just like normal. So at the end, he wants to come, and I'm not going to take much longer because it's very, very long here. And he basically just says that this entire concept really be'emet is not a machloka between them. He says that first of all, that for sure we should come and we should try to do the Netz. He says if it is that they are going to come and do a little bit later, they have to be very, very careful to do it a little bit later. But again, it's going to be still on time for the Zman of Kriyat Shema and Tefillah. But then he says, but he comes and he says, but to do with Yom Tov, there was a minhag to do it a little bit later. There's a whole reason for that as well. Maybe Belina will explain it tomorrow. And that's why it comes out that that's what his halacha was. His halacha was alecha techila for us. We should also try to do the Netz also in Shabbatot. And then he says, but if there's going to be the Ashkenazim, they're going to have a minhag to do it a little bit later, that's going to be okay. But they have to be very, very careful not to pass the time of the tefillah.